The Miami Heat defeated the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 5, sending them to the Eastern Conference Finals, winning the series 4-1. The Bucks were without Giannis, but the series was likely over either way, and the Milwaukee Bucks had a dominant defense throughout the regular season, and their defensive system led them to be a favorite to get and compete for an NBA championship. In this film room breakdown, we're going to look at why the Miami Heat's offensive system was designed to beat the Bucks. My name is Coach Gibson Pyper. You can follow me on Twitter at HalfCourtHoops. If you enjoy this breakdown, I have a Coach's Cut breakdown for this series in which I go into more detail about why the Heat's offense worked, and I'm using this as a Patreon alternative for support, but more importantly, extended film room breakdowns that I can't show here on YouTube. Now, in order to fully understand why the Heat's offense works against the Bucks, we need to know how the Bucks defensive system operates. The Bucks defense is designed to take away any opportunities of scoring at the rim and allow teams to shoot contested mid-range and three-point shots. Their cleaning the glass shot profile shows they only allow 21.5% of shots at the rim, 34.6% of shots from mid-range, and 43.9% from three. So their priority is to protect the rim and allow mid-range and allow more threes. With their drop ball screen coverage being heavily discussed on this channel, I have linked videos in the description if you want to check out those for more detail. Essentially, the Bucks keep their bigs defending in the paint and have their guards chasing players over the tops of screens and forcing them to take contested mid-range shots. In this series against the Miami Heat, we see a similar shot profile with the Heat taking 23.3% of their shots at the rim, 31.4% from mid-range, and 45.3% from three. The biggest difference for the Heat, they are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league, shooting 38.6% from three in the regular season and 38.5% in the playoffs, tied for first and third in the NBA. In the series against the Bucks, they hit 37.9% of their threes, just below their season average, but the way their offense runs is what really made it hard for the Bucks to defend. When most teams' plays are stopped, it will normally flow into one of three things: a ball screen, isolation, or a post-up. In the playoffs, more than likely it'll flow into a ball screen to try and pick on the other team's weakest defenders, and then if a switch occurs, ends with an isolation trying to attack. This is where the Heat's offense becomes extremely hard to guard, as they essentially never stop cutting, passing, or screening until the shot clock expires. They don't set up and let you defend a ball screen. The Miami Heat will use their bigs, basically Bam Adebayo, as their main hub for their offense and allow the four guards around him to make reads based on how the defense is defending them. Bam has the option to grab a rebound and bring the ball up, something that I've termed Bam, something that Draymond Green did great in Golden State, or they can initiate the offense by hitting him in the middle of the floor, also known as delay series, and going into a 5-out look. They can hit him at the elbows with either a play call or a flash cut, depending on what the situation calls for. Or get him involved in what I like to call dead action, where Bam is essentially in the mid-post on one side of the floor and trigger the cutting action from there. Once Bam has the ball, the Heat can also use Olynyk, Iguodala, and Crowder in these spots as well. The Heat guards will go into split cuts or screen away reads that open up cutting lanes and flow into dribble handoffs. Now the reads here are pretty simple. If you're being denied, you look for a backdoor. If they're switching, you look for slips. If they stay attached, you set the screen and maybe look to come off a dribble handoff or curl and make basic reads off of this. This is essentially what the Warriors made a living off of during the Steph and Clay years when they dominated the NBA. The Bucks defend handoffs similar to ball screens, so they basically drop their big into the paint and guards try and chase off those handoffs, especially against a player like Duncan Robinson. Staying attached is extremely important. They typically would sag off Bam when he has the ball. Now, I touched on this in the Giannis defensive breakdown when I previewed the Heat's defensive game plan against Giannis and what it should be, as well as this tweet where I kind of talk about Rondo. But sagging off allows the defense to clog the lane, and it allows open shots, which you may want a bad shooter to shoot. But the problem is it also allows clear vision for a great passer and playmaker like Bam in this scenario. If the initial handoff or cutter has no advantage, the Miami Heat will look to throw it back to Bam, and then look for a handoff, a hand back, or cut and screen again. So they'll look to basically give it to Bam, set up your defender, and go right back for a quick handoff, allow the defense to kind of reset or rest, and then catch them off guard. The Heat will continuously run this action over and over and over again until they get an open shot. Now, because the Bucks clog the paint and tend to overhelp, denying shots at the rim, these cutting actions typically opened up the driving kick lanes versus cuts to the baskets. These cuts to the basket would open up that lane for extra passes, for ball movement that allow the best shooting team to get these wide open looks from three. Now, in the regular season, the Bucks were the best ball screen defense, as well as the highest percentage of ball screens run against them at 37% of the time. Now, the Heat ran ball screens 33% of the time in the regular season, as well as the postseason. So the key for the Heat was running an efficient ball screen system against the best ball screen defense in the NBA. The Heat needed to find ways to counter the drop coverage, and the first thing that I was impressed with and noticed was Bam Adebayo's angle of his ball screens. When the Bucks defenders would trail the ball screen and try and stay attached, the angle of Adebayo's ball screen would force them to slow down, since he would screen their hips and his angle was angled towards half court and the sideline, so this did not allow them to stay attached. What this did for the guards for the Miami Heat, like Dragic, Hero, and Butler, was to get cleaner looks from mid-range, getting downhill without worrying about the Bucks guard contesting their shots, something that they're very good at, especially guards like Bledsoe and Middleton with the rear contest using some of their length. Another adjustment was that Adebayo would not even have any contact on his ball screens and sprint directly to the rim. So he would essentially kind of jab step or take one step towards the ball screen and then dive as hard as he could to the rim, similar to a slip. This put immediate pressure not only on his defender, in most scenarios it would be Lopez, but any help defenders, and it was an awesome move by Bam and the Heat. Along the lines of the no contact screens, a set that was designed to give the Bucks ball screen coverage trouble was this double ball screen set, but with Bam setting the second screen around the nail. Now let's compare this to the Celtics double ball screen, where they set screens higher for Kemba. Bam setting the screen to nail and then sprinting to the rim allows the guard to get downhill easily and read where the help is coming from, as well as finish with less congestion around them in the lane. Now, they went to this set in Game 5 down the stretch, scoring 3 straight times off of it, helping them end the series. Another way the Heat were able to punish the drop coverage was using Crowder and Olynyk setting the ball screen. The pick and pop was wide open all series long, with the Bucks refusing to change their defensive scheme and adjust. Now we're going to look at the Heat's 21 series, or some people call this pistol action, versus the Bucks. The play is going to start off with a step-up screen from a guard. Now the interesting thing here is for the Bucks, as the step-up screen here is set by Jay Crowder. So Crowder is going to step up and set the screen. Dragic is going to attack off this. Now this is a big part of where the Heat can expose that drop ball screen coverage. In this scenario, Dragic backs down George Hill and draws the foul. But the flexibility of the Heat lineups really impressed me, as we see Jimmy Butler setting this step-up screen on Giannis for Iguodala. So Iguodala is going to come off now, and because the Bucks are typically in drops coverage, here Matthews stays attached because they're trying to prevent Jimmy Butler from getting open and put a lot of pressure on him. Iguodala gets downhill and finds Butler as the roll man now. So as we go back, we can see Iguodala here comes off. Giannis is worried about protecting the lane, so he's going to get down here. Iguodala is going to try and turn the corner and attack the rim. So we have help here and help here from Giannis. And then Butler is going to roll behind it. So instead of a guard picking and popping, Butler rolls, ends up finishing the layup at the rim. Another example of them attacking this drop coverage is Duncan Robinson setting this screen here. Now this is where I find some of the biggest faults in Budenholzer's system. As we can see, Middleton here is the guy in drop coverage, and then Lopez is going to be the help man. So with a 21 action is this guard-to-guard screen. That's typically just an action. Everybody switches it. It's just an automatic switch, but the Bucks don't switch. They refuse to switch. So instead of switching here, this leaves one of the best shooters in the NBA, 45% three-point shooter Duncan Robinson, coming off this flare screen. Lopez is sagging off in the paint. Giannis is sagging off in the paint. So now we're leaving a wide open shooter from three, and he knocks it down. Another example of this 21 action, Duncan Robinson sets it. Now here, what I really like is the Heat kind of give the options. They give the option to Butler to use either screen. Not every team does this. Most teams will have Butler just come off this baseline screen. But here he has the option to use either screen. In this scenario, Robinson does a quick flare. Then they go right into their kind of bam action. He ends up knocking down the isolation pull-up. Now we're going to look at Chicago action out of delay, first with Bam, and then the next with Olynyk. They'll run this more often with Kelly Olynyk as a design play, but in their flow action or their kind of base offense, they'll run this with Bam. So you see the play starts before, you can't even see Jimmy Butler's passing the ball to Bam as the play starts. And then this is going to trigger just basic pin down action. So on this side here with Dragic, we're going to see Dragic screen down for Crowder. Then we're going to see Butler screen down for Robinson. So I call a pin down and a dribble handoff Chicago action. So Bam's going to come down in this dribble handoff here. And then it usually goes a handoff as a ball screen, basically the same time. For whatever reason, Giannis is sagged off in the lane. and Lopez is sagged off in the lane, Matthews is in the lane, and Middleton's obviously a little bit off. Bledsoe's a little more attached on the strong side, but the Bucks, you can see the defensive system is they're trying to basically keep everybody out of this area. The problem is Jay Crowder is shooting the ball really well. He just knocked down 2 threes. So when Giannis is sagging off here, this just gives him the clearest look from 3 you could ever have. Another example of this on this possession here, they hit Bam a little bit earlier. Now we get Robinson screening down for Dragic. This is just all in their flow offense. Now the thing that the Bucks aren't switching this action, they're going to stay attached. So when this turns into a ball screen, we get Bam screening here for Dragic. Again, going under it. We can see the idea is to kind of pack the lane here. Lopez is sagged off in drop coverage. This turns into a spread ball screen between Dragic and Bam. Dragic hits Bam on the roll, ends up hitting the easy floater. Here we're going to look at them running with Olynyk. And to me, this is kind of an example of the Bucks defensive system working against them. They're going to treat this action just like a dribble handoff. So as Hero comes off of this pin down in a dribble handoff, it's not switched, right? So right now Korver's trailing. We have a handoff. Hero's coming off this handoff here from Olynyk, right? Lopez is then going to be in drop coverage. Well, what's going to happen is because Butler kind of cut down and was going to screen over here, he clears that space. So what happens is Hero just has to take one dribble and look at the cleanest look you're going to ever get. You know, Korver's trailing and he's trying to do the best he can. Lopez is sagged off, preventing a rim touch. But now we're giving Hero a wide open look from 3, coming off in rhythm, and of course he knocks it down. Another example of this here is they use Dragic and Hero, and we go right into a ball screen, so the Bucks do a decent job of containing this. So as this ball screen happens, this is what I absolutely love about the Heat's offense. They get the ball to Olynyk in the post. Dragic comes and splits for Hero. Hero's going to come off this. And then Nunn is going to flash into space here almost all at the same time. So I'm going to go back and play it in real time because it just looks so good on film. So you got split cut coming off the screen, cutter on the weak side, and that leaves Olynyk open in the post one-on-one for a layup. One of the keys to the Heat offense is how they flash Bam in different scenarios. So here you'll see him flash in different spots, mainly in like the sweet spot middle of the floor. In this scenario, we're going to get split cut action. So Crowder is going to screen down here for Robinson. Since Robinson's being denied most of the time, he's going to kind of reject it into the paint. Crowder's then going to open up and receive a pass from Bam. What we're going to see is Crowder doesn't really like it, right? So he throws it right back to Bam and then screens down again. Now this turns into that Chicago action that we talked about before, right? To where now we get this pin down into a dribble handoff. This is an interesting, dichotomy. So Duncan Robinson's an extremely good three-point shooter, right? So DiVincenzo is on his back, kind of forcing him into the lane. Well, because Bam is slipping and rolling to the rim, Bledsoe is going to stunt and recover. That leaves Robinson allowed to get into mid-range game and knock down a pull-up. And what I really think is interesting is watch the Bucks staff here on the bench, as you can see them clapping, right, saying like that's what they want to do, force him into 2. But that's just a clean look from 2, and Duncan Robinson's actually a pretty good mid-range shooter when he decides to shoot it. So to me, that kind of shows the Bucks defensive mindset when you're trying to force Robinson off the 3 like that. Now, what a big part of these kind of flash actions, start off with is they kind of allow Bam to have freedom to do what he wants. So he hits Butler here. Butler is going to try and attack off this ball screen. Doesn't really like it. Throws it back to Bam. Later in the shot clock, because there's screening action, it kind of leaves one-on-one. So Bam's allowed to attack one-on-one in isolation with pretty much no help defense. Bam's not a great isolation player, as probably what the Bucks are happy with, but it still leaves him open playing one-on-one. So the ball gets pushed here by Dragic. Bam's kind of trailing on the left-hand side. He's going to go to his dunker spot, kind of post-up position. They're going to look for an advantage. Nothing's there. He flashes. They got cutting action. Decides he kind of likes it. Goes with Butler. He's going to set a ball screen. Go a little two-man game now. Butler ends up hitting the pull-up. So they'll basically flash Bam anytime in these possessions. He has the opportunity or the option to flash into kind of this sweet spot and kind of play a two-man game, keep it, make reads and allow the offense to flow. One of the most effective actions for the Heat has been the Dragic and Butler ball screen. So the Bucks were a little bit confused and couldn't decide how they actually wanted to guard it. In this scenario, they do switch. Butler attacks the closeout, drives, and gets fouled. The next example, we're going to see Dragic bring the ball up. Butler's going to help him set this ball screen involving Matthews and Bledsoe. This should be just a switch like for like, but instead they drop and go under, and Dragic hits the three. Which doesn't make any sense to defend it that way. Again, in game 2, Butler, Dragic ball screen, Dragic hits the three. It's just an easy opportunity for the Bucks to stymie their offense and switch it, and yet they haven't done it. Again, on the side, Dragic and ball screen, game 1, Butler turns the corner, gets fouled. Dragic bringing the ball up. We're going to go in overtime here, so it's their go-to play. Butler screens. This time they go under. Dragic ends up missing the three. But the point stands to where this has been the most effective action because the Bucks refuse to switch. Another way the Heat trigger kind of the split cut action is what I call dead action, where they kind of throw it to Bam in almost like this pistol location, almost like the mid post. He can catch it basically here, all the way back to here and kind of operate. And then what you'll see is kind of a two-man game on the strong side. You'll get kind of screening action, cutting action on this weak side, reading the defense. That just kind of triggers their motion. In this scenario, Butler's going to, Wathy's here jumps it, so Butler's going to be open on this little quick cut. And it's just easy action. You can't get beat that easily if you're the Bucks, the number one defense. It's just not disciplined. Again, Iguodala hits Bam here. Now we're going to get a split cut action for Hero. So Hero is going to come off this split action for a dribble handoff. So that Chicago action we talked about. Here we're going to see drive downhill, and because the Bucks are in drop coverage, Giannis is hanging off in the paint, but Bam's left wide open. And of course, they are encouraging mid-range shots, but that's just an easy catch and look for Bam. And that's another example here. We're going to see Dragic throw it in there. We're going to get that same Chicago action for Duncan Robinson. Now, because he's being chased, right, and Williams is over here in the paint in drop coverage, right, Robinson's going to escape to the corner, but he's going to let Connaughton fly by right here and basically leave the best shooter in the gym wide open for a three. The Miami Heat run double fist or double ball screen action more than anybody else, probably the Celtics. We're going to see this is going to turn into a side double fist ball screen. Now this is an empty look. This was the kind of main option in game one because the Bucks decided they didn't know how to guard it. We see Butler setting the first screen, Bam setting the second screen. We can see both Bucks defenders are in drop coverage. So you see Dragic is going to turn this corner, and as he turns this corner, we're going to see Bam is going to be rolling hard to the rim. Williams is in charge of the rim protection. Giannis is helping off on Bam because that's what the Bucks system is designed to do. So that's going to leave Butler wide open here. As Dragic drives baseline, he's going to notice that and kick it out to Butler for an open three. Now this is kind of designed to beat the Bucks defense, this type of ball screen action. In transition here, we can see it set in kind of flow of their offense. This time we have Olynyk, who's a pick and pop threat. So we're going to get Hill on the veer back switch. That's going to leave Lopez on Dragic. And this is a pretty bad mismatch for Lopez because Dragic, all he has to do is just catch and shoot for an open three. Another example from game 1 here. We're going to see this ball screen set on the wing here as Jimmy Butler kind of turns this into the double fist ball screen after the flare. We're going to see Olynyk now rolls, right? And we're going to get a switch of Williams onto Hero and then Middleton onto Olynyk as Jackson's going to go off on Butler. So we're going to see Heroes now has the mismatch versus Williams. He's going to end up drive to the baseline, crossover too easy, dish, and then Olynyk gets fouled. In game 4, they get the lob action, so you can see this in transition. Butler sets the first one, Bam slips it, and now because Lopez steps up here, Matthews is on the high side, and all you have to do is just throw it up here to the rim and let your best dunker go up and dunk it. Now this set here is designed against the Bucks drop defense. They ran this some in the regular season, but not as much as they've run it in the playoffs against the Bucks. I just called this double fist low, where it's a double fist ball screen where Hero sets the first one, then Bam is going to set the second one kind of around the nail here. You know, the nail's in the middle of the floor here. Basically somewhere in the middle of the floor, he's going to set the second ball screen. Since the Bucks are in drop coverage with guards, which again makes no sense, we're going to see Dragic is able to come off here, and as he gets downhill, because Bam does a good job screening off his man, now we've created the advantage, and Dragic is able to rise up and hit the floater, and Giannis is too low. Again, the same kind of action in the middle of the floor here. We see Butler kind of set up that screen. As Butler comes off this here, we're going to see a kick because this weak side action. So let's go back to this real quick. So this weak side action on this exchange here is actually going to set up this reason this kick is open, because normal teams, like if you watch the Celtics, the Raptors, any other teams, they're going to basically stay at home and not exchange and go, and they'll just basically stay. But again, Middleton gets caught in no man's land here and drops too low. So instead of screaming switch, 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 we get Middleton caught too low. That allows Crowder to be open for the open three. Now here we get this action in transition. So we're going to see Crowder come here and set the first screen. Bam's going to set the second screen low. So as Hill gets caught on these screens, now Dragic is going downhill, who's a really good finisher from the mid-range and floater game. So Lopez has to take him. Giannis was slightly concerned more about Jay Crowder, so that's going to leave Bam wide open on the roll. And even though the spacing is actually not very good here, as we can see Butler kind of crashing in, it still allows Bam to be open on the roll because of the gravity of Crowder. At the elbow, the Heat will use Bam in sets and in their flow action. So this first play was probably a play call to allow the players to play, but we're going to see Bam essentially is going to catch the ball at the elbow, right? Either one doesn't really matter, but typically when he catches it, you're going to see a couple different actions. You'll see either a back screen, as we see here from Robinson, a flare screen where he would turn this and flare for the point guard, or you're going to see like a down screen for Robinson to come off this. So they have a couple different reads that they can run off this. Here we're going to look for maybe a back screen for Robinson to set it. Hero's going to reject it and come for a handoff. So these are all options they have out of their offense that just go into the flow. Not a great pass, so it doesn't really create an advantage, but the Heat are going to continuously look to attack. As we attack a closeout here, bad defense by Middleton, ends up hitting the floater. Here we're going to hit Bam at the elbow. Now we're going to see the opposite elbow is empty, and this is their strong action where they set kind of a double stagger screen. But the difference is instead of a normal stagger screen like the Lakers would run a stagger screen into a dribble handoff as a set, the Heat are going to use this as just like a template, right? Think of it like a formation where they give the player the option. So Dragic can basket cut, he can down screen, he can go instead of stagger screen with Robinson, he could cut inside the lane instead of back screen, he can go instead of ball screen for Bam, he can go back and get a handoff from Bam, he could fake the handoff and then Dragic can go screen in the corner here. You know, Dragic can cut through instead of a little cross screen for Crowder. He could go through and set a cross screen for Butler. He could go through, Robinson could screen for him, and Dragic can come off the screen, right? He could come off the screen and do a dribble handoff. There's just so many options for just that one player, right? So we just discussed like 8 options for just Dragic cutting to the basket, right? So these options give the Heat flexibility to kind of run whatever they want. In this scenario, Bam drives, Giannis helps off the corner to help, Crowder hits the open 3. Again, we hit Bam at the elbow. I know it's not, perfect every time at the elbow, but essentially that's what they're looking for in this elbow action. Now this goes into 2-man game with Dragic. Dragic hits Bam on the roll. Heat do a great job staying patient when the trap comes, find the extra pass for an open 3. So that leads us right into the next action where what I call extra passes or one more passes. So here we start off the play with a pass to Bam. Bam's going to go into a dribble handoff for Duncan Robinson. 2-man game. Robinson doesn't have a 3 advantage, so he just throws it right back to Bam. Right back to Bam on a quick pass. Then they go to Butler in a post mismatch, so he's got Connaughton on him in the post. Bam's going to basket cut here, and I like how he goes to the opposite dunker spot. So as Jimmy Butler is getting this post up, what we're going to see is the Heat have good spacing off on the weak side here. So you get Robinson, Dragic, and then Crowder here. So any help comes, Butler can see where it's coming from and make the easy read. So the Bucks, and I don't know if this was designed or they talked about in the scouting report, it's kind of what we talked about, we don't know. Hill's going to go right here for a quick strong side trap, which in my opinion is never a good idea. Butler just has to make a simple pass to Crowder. Bledsoe is going to be responsible for help here. Now, normally, DiVincenzo would be the next guy, and you just kind of switch up the line, or hopefully Hill would be able to sprint back and get on Robinson. But the issue is Robinson's such a good shooter that DiVincenzo probably has no help responsibility. Don't know for sure, but typically speaking, if you're going to, in this scenario, if you're going to choose between these 2 players, Dragic and Robinson, and a Robinson corner 3, they're going to, generally speaking, allow the player who's above the break to catch and shoot this shot. Problem is, Dragic is a pretty good shooter and ends up knocking down the open 3. The Heat go to a little horn small look, so you can see as we'll go back, the players exchange. So you see that Robinson and Hero are going to exchange on the screens. So you get this screen here and a screen here. Butler's going to come off this, and again, because the Bucks were refusing to switch, DiVincenzo is just going to hard hedge out here. So Butler's going to be able to draw two. Now, what's interesting about this action is normally Robinson is a pick and pop threat, right? So when you see this ball screen here, Robinson's IQ kicks in. He recognizes that two are on the ball with Butler. Hero's picking and popping, so Robinson's going to basket cut, and because his player typically has no help responsibilities that we talked about, Hill's going to go with him, and that allows Hero a wide open look from three. Unfortunately, to the obvious annoyance of the Heat staff, he makes an extra pass to Cutter, who ends up finding Iguodala for the three, but they still created a great look nonetheless. Now the Heat do have the ability to find mismatches or hunt mismatches, as we can see Robinson hunting for Connaughton here. Butler, in game one, primarily, they were looking for these kind of switches and mismatches. They would look to get, Hill on Butler, so using the Dragic and Butler ball screen that we talked about. They would kind of find Butler and then go and set a ball screen for him, or have Butler as the ball screener. So you're going to see a little ghost action. Butler turns the corner, getting downhill, ends up kicking extra and just missing the open three. Created a great look nonetheless. Offensive rebound, and obviously Hero finishes off the game in game one with that offensive rebound three. But essentially, they'll just try and find the mismatch. So they have the flexibility to run this beautiful free-flowing motion offense, but also try and find the mismatch and get their opportunity. So you see Hill gets switched on to Butler here. Butler's going to look to attack, end up doing a little dance, hitting a turnaround pull-up. Now, there's a lot of talk about Giannis guarding Jimmy Butler, which is exactly what happens here. End of game three, Giannis is going to take the Butler assignment, or he's cross match on him. Either way, he's guarding Jimmy Butler right now with the Heat up for 2.5 minutes left. We can see Eric Spoelstra here signaling fist one, right? So Dragic is the one, so fist is just a ball screen. So we see fist one. So this just means Dragic's going to come and set a ball screen. Now, Giannis is an elite defensive player of the year, but ball screens are not his strong suit. And the reason for this is because it's hard for him to navigate around these smaller screens, just being a bigger player. For some reason, Hill is in drop coverage because they don't want to switch it or even hedge it or even trap it. So Giannis has to try and fight through this ball screen set at a great angle by Dragic to kind of talk about the angle of Bam's screens. So Butler's going to drive downhill. And this is where the beauty of the Heat offense comes in. So Butler has the option here, right, to maybe find Bam cutting the basket or Crowder relocating. Now in this scenario, Crowder might drift, right? But because Bam is low, he recognizes that, and Crowder is going to lift up almost into like the slot. Middleton does a good job of cracking down and helping. Lopez's rim protection. So now the main option is for Jimmy Butler to find Jay Crowder. Now here, it could be a pass for Bam, but Middleton's actually in good position. He might foul him. They might not get a clean look. Butler recognizes that Crowder is going to flash up into the slot area and throws the ball to where he's going to be for a perfect bounce pass and knock down open three. One specific thing that the Bucks defense is prone to is drop coverage allows pick and pops, which is weird to think about because normally in this scenario, Marvin Williams is playing the 5. The Heat are going small with basically, you can pick Crowder or Iguodala at the 5. It doesn't really matter. But here, Crowder just sets a ball screen, picks and pops. Marvin Williams looked like he's calling for, Connaughton to switch back out. Not great communication here. Crowder attacks the closeout, drives and fouls. But the biggest problem that, in my opinion, is that this drop coverage allows pick and pops, and they do it with guards too. Here we can see DiVincenzo getting 2 on the ball. We touched on this play earlier. Hero makes a weird extra pass to get an open 3 out of it. But it's susceptible to pick and pops, and that's what the Heat have. They have players who can pick and pop. Crowder pick and pop. Iguodala pick and pop. Olynyk pick and pop. You name it, they have players who can set the ball screen and pick and pop. A huge part of the Heat's offense is what I would call zooms. I got this term from a former NBA coach and current college coach, where they throw it to the big and go right back in a dribble handoff. I think NBA teams call this action zoom action, but essentially it's just a 2-man game where if they don't like the advantage that they have, they'll throw it to a big and then cut or go right back to a hand off, throw it back to the big, find the big on the roll, and just basically keep their offense moving. The entire goal of this is to never slow down, is to keep the offense moving. So we're going to see Robinson come off, throw it to Bam, go into cutting action, Bam ISO pull up. You see them come off the screen, come off a handoff. They don't like what they have. They just throw it to the big and run back right for a handoff. And they'll run this action with different players. You'll see them run this with Jay Crowder at the 5. So you see Crowder will catch it and throw it back and just run a little 2-man game action. They'll go keeps, they'll go handoff, they'll go ball screen, always keeping the defense guessing.